I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I coach people. I'm a career and leadership coach. I help people throughout their job search, help them once they're on board to be effective. And this is a great question. I'm telling you, folks, you're going to hear more and more often on your interviews, especially if you're in leadership roles. The question is, tell me about a time when you challenged someone's behavior that was discriminatory or inappropriate. Now, I originally found this question researching a site that had questions for government employees of a particular sort. But I'm telling you, for you people in corporate who think that you're immune to questions like this, folks, the more lawsuits that get filed for racism, sexism, ageism, homophobia, I'm telling you, folks, this is going to start showing up more regularly. And I want to say that the bonus points that you'll receive are for when you call attention to them in the hiring process, where you catch people in their blind spots about hiring. So, for example, there are all sorts of situations that older workers contend with, where they have to deal with the perception that as soon as they walked in the door, there was no chance that they were getting the job because the manager was 20 years more junior than they. And where you can talk about situations where you had conversations with, I'm going to say millennial, but it's really the wrong term here, someone in their 30s about how they evaluate people in their 50s and 60s for quote unquote fit. How you talk to people who are of one nationality about interviewing people from a different nationality that might have been in conflict with one another over the course of centuries, where you deal with issues of race, of faith, and other places. This is really where the bonus is. Now, I'm not going to teach you how to language this. I'm just trying to get you to start thinking so you're not shocked at the time of the interview. And frankly, if you're not confronting these issues, there's a problem there because we all know that these exist in the workforce. I remember when I was relatively junior in the recruiting field, like a long time ago, there were two people who were interviewing for, one person was being interviewed for a job at a particular organization. They were both from India, but they were from different castes. They weren't allowed to talk with one another. And the result wound up being they sat in silence for a half hour. That's an extreme example, and I don't believe this would happen today, but it happened then. It woke me up to certain scenarios that can occur. So think in advance and start thinking about, frankly, your hiring process. And this is for hiring managers, this is for HR, this is for anyone in a position of authority. And for you in staff, you need to start thinking of this as well and how to do it diplomatically and how to do it powerfully. I know I've sat in meetings with people where they've used terms that are offensive in one way or another, that call attention to bigotry that may not be the obvious things. It may be using the B word to describe a woman or the C word. These days in corporate, at least in the US, the N word does not show up all that often, but the behaviors are still there, where people who are very qualified still get passed over, where they are professionally segregated into certain roles. This is not just true about African Americans. This can be true of women, people from certain nations. Like, one of the things I picked up on a long time ago, how women from India and women from Russia were segregated into quality assurance roles and generally did not wind up in roles where they were involved with development. So confronting these behaviors without being confrontational, by asking questions at the time to call attention to the subtleties of the bias that have worked their way through the system, I think will serve you very well. So, this is not about standing up, pounding a table. Sometimes it's while you're in the room with the person who has heard something that could hurt them, that calls attention to their bias. And I'll just simply say, from my own experience, being at a firm where an owner made a racist statement with the employee present of that particular background and watching the horror on her face and the hurt, makes me particularly sensitive to this. And being called to testify in the court case by both parties was really very interesting. So I hope you find this helpful. I hope this provokes some thought on your part or evokes some thought on your part, because you need to be prepared for these situations, because frankly, it is going to come up on interviews. It is going to show up in the real workforce, as it should. Hope you found this helpful. If you're interested in my coaching you, reach out to me through LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/the Big Game Hunter. Mention that you saw the video. I just like knowing that I'm helping some folks. And once we're connected, message me. Tell me that you're interested in coaching. I also want to mention, one last thing on that subject. If you're outside the U.S., mention that you subscribe to my podcasts, my videos, whatever. And by the way, to subscribe, let me try this again. I always have trouble with this. If you're watching on YouTube, click the little icon in the lower right, and you'll be able to subscribe to the channel. And if you only have a couple of questions for me, reach out to me in one of two ways. If you want to do it by phone, contact me through prestoexperts.com. If you want to do it as a video chat, you have an iOS device. There's an app called Magnify, MAGNIFI. And you can, I would suggest connecting with me first on LinkedIn, telling me that you have a couple of questions, want to contact me through Magnify. Let's schedule a time for a conversation. Hope you have a great day. Take care.